Well, Andrew Jackson Fisher was my great-grandfather, and there are no pictures of him in the family anywhere. He was kind of a scoundrel. He had a past. And so I think all the pictures of him were thrown out somewhere down the line. So it's just been this big hole because I have pictures of both of his parents, all of his siblings, his son, my grandfather, but never a picture of Andrew. So this was a tough one. So a year or two ago, I started researching digitized books and records online and found out that Andrew had been a volunteer fireman in New York City. The legendary people who would haul their own machines and pump it by hand and the like. And that department got replaced in 1865 by a paid department that had steam-powered pumpers hauled by horses. So the old veterans kind of felt they were, of course, superior to the easy, cushy job of the paid people. And over time, they liked to maintain their relationships, and they started a Veteran Firemen's Association in New York City in the mid-1880s. And they had their own clubhouse, and they would do things to help the widows and the children of deceased firemen, but also get together and have a mighty fine time with one another. And part of that was taking excursions. One of the excursions they'd always dreamed of doing, instead of just going around the area, was to take a trip across the continent to San Francisco. And so they put plans in action to do that in 1887. And they stopped in St. Louis and Chicago and Denver and Omaha, and one of the stops was here in Salt Lake City. And so I called the New York Firefighters Museum to find out about this trip and if they had any information on it. And they said, oh, we have this big photograph of all the firemen, we have all their faces, but we don't know who any of them are. So I decided to research this excursion. This was rather intriguing, and so I started to go into all the digitized newspapers that are available online and got everything I could about it. Found several references to Andrew in papers in Omaha, New York, and one in Salt Lake City. This was just after they had gotten back from the trip. And it said that Andrew J. Fisher of New York had sent to Jacob Alt, who was a former New York fireman himself who lived here in Salt Lake City, this full body picture of himself in firefighter's gear. I thought, my gosh, here it is, all these years later, he sent a picture to Salt Lake City. So I got very excited about that and called my friend who's very interested in research and this type of thing, Ron Fox, and he got pretty excited himself.
So my friend Scott Fisher sent me a copy of an article that he found in a Salt Lake paper talking about his great-grandfather sending a photograph. From that, I went down to the State Historical Society at the Rio Grande and looked through their collection of photographs. I also learned that there was a great historic collection of fire memorabilia and photographs and documents up at This Is the Place State Park. And so here at Ottinger Hall, Scott continued his search.
So the trail was starting to get a little hot, and you figure, okay, I've got to start looking under the first stone. And the first stone in this case was going to be This Is the Place Heritage Park and the recreated Ottinger Hall, Fireman's Hall from Salt Lake City. We looked through and saw that really everything they had was basically on the walls. This was not a research center, this is basically just a display. And when I got up to the second floor, I saw the group photo of the firemen marching that had been described to me by the museum in New York, and I'd also seen online, but of course, not having seen an original, I hadn't seen one with all the detail to it. So that was pleasing, but what I really found shocked me. A little key of cardstock at the bottom of the picture with the name of every fireman and a number next to it. And when I looked closer to the picture, I saw that this particular photograph had numbers on each little figure written in white. Well, I had 104 figures to go through to find which one had the right number. And finally, I found them towards the back of the right-hand line of march. And what a complete shock that was. We got the picture off the wall, took photographs of it. They came out really surprisingly good considering how small these figures were, through glass with reflection and the like. And I couldn't believe it. Looking into his eyes for the first time was a very strange experience because I knew so much about him. He had been involved with politics in Tammany Hall during the corrupt era of Boss Tweed, and he had had his own business, but he'd also had all kinds of issues within the family. And now I got to see who this man was that I'd learned so much about. So I actually took a moment to introduce myself to him and say hello. As I left, I was making phone calls to friends and family and say, you're not going to believe what happened here. Almost 30 years to find this. So it really goes to show you can never give up, because there are so many new tools out there that at least give you a chance.